All right, everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So we've got basically two back-to-back events, or little sessions here right now. The first will be a little bit of an overview of the state of agrivoltaics in the United States right now, sort of our level of deployment, the state of the research, et cetera. And then we're going to move right in from there to a farmer forum. So we're going to have real-life farmers up on stage. We're going to have the opportunity to hear from them, hear their stories, hear their experiences, and then I think most importantly, then also get perspectives and questions from you all in the audience, questions you might have for people that are actually farming in an agrivoltaic project already. So as I get going, I think what I wanted to do, so my name is Jordan Macknick. I'm with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL. We're based out in Colorado. We've been working on agrivoltaics now since 2010, going all the way back to 2010. And I wanted to give you sort of a state of where we're at in terms of deployment, as well as sort of the state of research and where that research is going. So overall, a lot of the work that I'm going to be showing you is sort of informed by our INSPIRE project, and this was the Department of Energy's first investment into agrivoltaics all the way back in 2016. The INSPIRE project has sort of been used to explore multiple aspects of agrivoltaics, both economics, modeling, as well as demonstration and field work. And so we currently have about 24 active field work projects located all across the country, where we look, which include sheep grazing, they include pollinator habitat, it includes crop production, all sorts of other applications of this. And it's really meant to, what we try to do with the INSPIRE project is really provide a foundational base of data. We try to produce as much data and share it as widely and freely as we can to support better investments from industry, better decision making from our friends in the policymaking world. So I would also want to highlight my phenomenal INSPIRE team that's both at NREL as well as at Argonne National Lab. Many of the folks are here today. Alexis Pescaris, Jay Martin, Tom Hickey, Julia Chamberlain, Austin is an alumni, he counts. The whole host of great folks that we're really happy to, and privileged to work with, that really span a whole host of different types of skill sets and training that allow us to really look at this complex topic of agrivoltaics, I think, more holistically. So with that, let's talk about the state of agrivoltaics in the country right now. And when I say agrivoltaics, we sort of have a big umbrella definition. So we do include pollinator habitat, in addition to grazing, in addition to crop production, in addition to solar greenhouses in that. As part of our effort with the INSPIRE project, we are tracking projects all across the country. And so sort of you can check out our map. If you've got a phone, you can check out the QR code. It's an interactive map. It allows you to filter, allows you to sort, allows you to sort of explore all sorts of different types of details about each of these projects. But what we're seeing, we've tracked and been able to verify over 500 different agrivoltaic projects across the country right now, representing more than 10 gigawatts of capacity in over 60,000 acres. These are projects that we've been able to verify, validate as being agrivoltaic projects. One thing you'll note is that the pollinator habitat really represent the largest number. We've seen over 300 different pollinator sites, but grazing sites really represent the largest capacity, with over 4 gigawatts or 6 gigawatts of documented grazing sites here. One thing you'll also notice, if you're paying attention to Lexi earlier when she showed sort of the map of the grazing estimates that Alyssa had put together, we're probably way undercounting all the grazing sites across the country. During lunch, I sat in a table full of solar grazers. I learned about a dozen more sites that are not represented on this map right now. I think that's an exciting area, and I think it's something that's going to be really hard to keep track of, as this field is so dynamic and is changing. But that's why working with ASGA does have a survey, and they do have a way to sort of track this. So if you do not see your site on here or on the website, and you'd like to get it up there, you can either go to that QR code or talk to the folks at ASGA, and we can get it on their map and our map as well. So what we're seeing with the sizes, almost all the, pretty commonly, all these sizes are between 4 to 6 acres per megawatt across all the different application types, which shouldn't be surprising. And then we're seeing a large number of pollinator sites that are 5 megawatts or less, but then grazing sites really are those that really start getting very, very, very large. And those are sort of distributed all across the country. So here we see some more of the geographic diversity of where we're seeing these different projects, and all these maps were put together by Julia. So thank you, Julia, for excellent work on this. But you can see sort of the grazing along the coasts and the southern parts of the country, the habitat sort of really in the northwest, and the habitat and grazing sites sort of in the four corners of the states. And our crop production sites, there's about three dozen crop production sites. Those are sort of sprinkled all across the country, including we have sites in Alaska, in Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, in addition to the mainland. So that's sort of where we're at. As part of our Inspire efforts, we are going to be updating this and keeping everyone up to date on where, really what are the new types of projects being built, because this field is growing so rapidly. We want to create this resource so people are aware and able to tell where the closest project to where you live might be, and maybe you can go visit that site. So that's sort of where we're sitting with the current state of agrivoltaic deployment. Another thing we do is look at agrivoltaics research and do a sort of overview of the state of the literature to the state of the science. What do we know? What do we know and what do we don't know? Much of this is represented in our data portal, also on our website. One thing we've seen, in addition to the deployment of agrivoltaics projects really skyrocketing the last few days, also the research associated with agrivoltaics has really skyrocketed the last few years. Almost, most of that research is actually focused on crop production. As we talked about, there's so many projects on grazing, so many acreage, and megawatts associated with grazing. There's relatively little research on solar grazing thus far. A lot of the people in this room are doing that work, which is great and badly needed. But the research isn't really just confined to the United States. As you see from this map, it's really a global field. There's a lot of research happening all across the world, with Asia really dominating a lot of the actual research and publications on agrivoltaics so far. The U.S., I would say, is catching up and catching up fast, and investments from DOE and USDA and state agencies in research have really helped facilitate that. But it's important to note, we are still really in the infancy of this field. We are learning a lot. We're trying to draw as much as we can from insights from Asia, from Europe, but of course we know we need a lot more research happening on the soil in the United States as well. With the research itself, we sort of categorize it into 5 big buckets: biological sciences, think insects, plants, livestock, human health; physical sciences, things like soil, microclimate, hydrology; social sciences, including perspectives, policy, economics; technology issues related to PV systems, different configurations, siting; and then cross-cutting topics related to standards, best practices, tools, methods, et cetera. So these are sort of the broad areas of which how we analyze the work. And I'm going to skip through this, but we go through in a whole host of detail. This is only a sub-level. We go into 75 different specific topics for how we categorize and assess what is the state of that research. And thanks to Tom Hickey for this beautiful figure. But the important thing is that we think we've got a good assessment of what has been done, what has been researched, what do we know. And so it makes us think about, okay, where are we going next? What is sort of our next step for research? where do we want to be? And I sort of think about where we want to go. Our end state is analogy I think about with throwing a dart on a map. Let's throw a dart anywhere where it lands on that map. Let's say, we throw it and it lands over in Illinois, where we are right now. The ideal research, the ideal tools we would have would be able to say, okay, given this farm, I can tell you which solar configuration and which crops or which solar configuration and which animals and what stocking density we would use to achieve our maximum economic benefit and ecological benefits and food benefits. That's sort of the state where we want to get to. We're not there yet. There's still a lot we need to learn about plant response. There's a lot we need to know more about economics, about all these system designs, but that's sort of where we see things going. But we know when we do research, because this is such a dynamic field, because there is such urgency in developing solar projects, we know we can't wait, the ideal 10 years. If we're doing agricultural studies, we might want to do research for 5 years, 10 years. So we really have a long-term understanding of how that crop or how that practice performs on that land. We don't have that time. So we really have to think about how we approach our research in such a way that it can be responsive to the real needs of farmers, responsive to the real needs of the solar industry, and responsive to, I think, our both domestic and global policy goals associated with solar deployment and decarbonization. And so that's sort of many of the things that sort of inform how we talk about research, how we approach research. We know it has to be relevant to policy. We know it has to be relevant to the social conditions in which it arrives, whether it's an urban system like we just heard about, or a rural system, a large system, a small system. It needs to sort of meet those needs of the people there. We also know it needs to sort of be integrated. We can't just look at solar without looking at the vegetation. We need to look at it together. So from that, we have been working, NREL, the Inspire Project, DOE, we've been working jointly with USDA, so the Department of Agriculture, other researchers, leading researchers all across the country to think about, okay, how do we synthesize this? How do we really make this make sense? How do we guide our research so that it can provide these values? And sort of this is sort of a grand reveal, sort of a sneak peek of our agrivoltaics research roadmap framework. Again, we've been doing this collaboratively and thinking about how do those specific areas where we know we need to research fit into the broader context of the very dynamic solar industry world, the very dynamic agricultural world, and also be done in such a way that we're not sort of wasting time or being duplicative in all of our efforts. And so this right here, this sort of framework highlights our desired end goals of having solar and agricultural industry relevant research that spans foundational, early stage, all the way to commercialization, this coordinated synergistic research, as well as research that is relevant to local communities as well as to policymakers. So this is something that we've been working on. We'll continue to refine, continue to develop over the next few years. But I wanted to use this venue, this opportunity to share with you sort of where we're at in the research as well as where we're going. So with that, thank you very much for the time to be able to share this state of deployment and research. Okay, now we're going to have a very smooth transition. You're not getting rid of me that yet. I have the honor of being able to moderate the next session, which is an open farmer forum. So we're going to have real-life farmers coming on stage. So those of you, please, in our session, please come on down. We are going to, again, try to be maximizing the opportunity to hear the real-life experiences of these agrivoltaic farmers and organizations, and give them an opportunity to share their experiences of what it's really like to farm in this context, and then give the audience, you all, a lot more chance to ask them, burning questions you might have about some of these realities. So, The process for what we'll do is we will have each person, each of the farmers here down the line give a short introduction. I would say maybe a 2 to 3 minute introduction of yourself and of your farm, of why you're here, your connection to agrivoltaics, and hopefully that'll sort of spark some ideas, spark some questions, spark some thoughts you all might have for them. So with no further ado, let's start with you, Iain.
Is this working?
Yep.
All right, Iain Ward, Solar Agricultural Services, working with quite a few developers in Massachusetts, as you heard if you were in the last session. We help permit and work with EPC contractors on projects, but also as part of being first, or one of the first to do this, we had to become the farming company as well. So we're the farmer of record on a number of projects in Massachusetts, and we've kind of found this niche where we can be the farmer of record, sign the legal documents so that farmers don't have to sign the 26-page documents, and have a sub-license agreement with farmers. So we can talk legalese, but we've been able to figure out how to do that. So we grow crops. We work with Paul, who's coming up next. One of the crops we grow is cranberries. Those are the primary ones, but also leafy greens and other vegetables. We're working with projects across the country on row crops, commodity crops, hay, and soy, and some of the cash crops. So looking forward to talking to you about that.
Hi everybody, my name is Matt Riggs. I'm a 5th generation corn and soybean farmer from Champaign County, Illinois. My family, my brother and I namely, several years ago identified the need to specialize because row crop, commodity crop agriculture is a game of scale now. It's a business of scale. We've got $4 corn right now. I don't know if everybody knows what that means, but the back of the napkin math is we will do everything right on our farm this year, not make any mistakes, and lose $300 an acre farming corn. That's with all subsidies included. So I'm glad that 8 years ago we started a company where we add a whole bunch of value to our grain. So we are at least the Midwest leader of vertically integrating specialty grain into beer. And luckily for us, beer is worth quite a bit, more than just corn. So that's worked out really well for us. I came to this event last year because I was thinking, what else can we do to specialize? This agrivoltaics concept sounds really, really, really cool. I left here really excited. I engaged with my trade organization. I'm a 3rd generation Farm Bureau member, and it became very clear to me very quickly that they were not up to speed on this at the national level. I didn't actually get a response from anybody at the national level, which was a bit frustrating, but got kicked to the state level, and the email I got was asking me what agrivoltaics was, and I thought, holy cow. So started working. I was told essentially to start at the county level, so started working on influencing possible policy changes at the county level that would trickle up to the national level. Literally just had a meeting at my county level, and essentially my proposed changes, carving out a little exemption from the Farm Bureau's policy against any solar on prime farmland, was tabled. I'm not saying that hopefully they'll re-engage and look at that sometime. So that's the voice I'm bringing, is I want to bring the real, actual commodity grain farmer voice to this discussion, because last year there was one other farmer that grew corn in the entire conference that I knew of. During one of the presentations I asked, and there was one other guy, and I'm like, hey, where's the Farm Bureau at? And he's like, yeah, I don't know, they should probably be here because this is important. So I know they're probably here this year, and I don't want to bash the organization. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to advocate that this is a huge opportunity for farmers, and if we keep the mindset of no development on productive farmland, well, it's going to happen anyway. And in my home county, projects are popping up all over the place, and there is no dual use underneath, and there is no extra revenue going to that small independent farmer. My parting thought before I pass the mic: the industry loves to brag that 96% of Illinois farms are family owned. That's true, but less than a quarter of the farmland is actually owned by the farmer. And that's getting smaller and smaller every year. Central Illinois grain farmers own 16% of the farmland that they farm. So I hope that this industry, agrivoltaics, can be a bulwark against the deterioration and really the destruction of the small family farm in the Midwest. I believe it has the potential to do that, but only if we can convince small independent farmers that it's in their best interest to do that on a limited acreage on their own land, rather than just having absentee landowners take all the benefit of this and box the farmers out.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Knowlton. I'm the 5th generation operator of our family farm in Grafton, Massachusetts, Central Mass. We're the proud operators also of a agrivoltaic solar array. We have 14 acres with cattle grazing under it, 3 acres with vegetables being grown under it. And what brought us there was I had a ground mount system originally, and the disappointing part, it was fabulous, but you can't use the property. So this was a way that kind of, an idea that went out between the solar developer, myself, and Iain got involved, and it ramped up and became a reality. So I'm here to really promote it and tell you that it's a reality and it works. We're very happy with it. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Sophia. I am not a real life farmer, but I'm grateful to be in the presence of farmers and to work closely with farmers. So I work at a nonprofit called the Food Group. We run a program called Big River Farms, where we work with immigrant, refugee, and other farmers of color, trying to break down barriers to access to land and capital and help folks build sustainable vegetable businesses. So we really approach agrivoltaics from a bit of a different lens, looking at it as a potential land access solution. So we hear from so many of the folks that we work with that they are not in a position to afford land. Land prices are really, really high, and that they are often faced with year-to-year leases, which if you're trying to become an organic vegetable grower, year-to-year lease is just not remotely feasible. So we are really excited to be working with partners at US Solar and Connexus in Minnesota to think about offering long-term leases to farmers of color within solar arrays that are already existing and owned by the solar companies.
All right, can you hear me? My name is John Langdon. I'm a 4th generation farmer from Western Oregon, predominantly grass seed for the last 100 years or so. We planted hazelnut orchards, and we also grow Oregon wild rice. And I have a 1,500 acre proposed solar project on my farm. And the plan is to do full agrivoltaics, do a cropping system in all 1,500 acres. So Dr. Chad Higgins, who you may have heard earlier, is helping me build a farm plan to go along with the application from the solar developer, which will be the difference between approval and this project not getting approved. So I feel like there's a responsibility and then an opportunity for my farm to be an example of what is possible to take this thing into the future. To have, like you were saying, Matt, I'm a member of the Farm Bureau. I serve on the county board in my little county. And so when we look at like, what does the future look like for ag? And you talk about the trends. And so one of the things I look at is the next generation. We're 3rd generation, 4th generation, 5th generation. Well, the next generation, asking them to join a sinking economic ship is probably not very attractive to them. So for the people that are close to interconnection, this is an opportunity to maybe secure the farm financially in a way that really is a godsend. So what I want to do is make sure that we do our best on my project to set an example and figure out everything that can be figured out so we can showcase to the nation and even the world how the traditional generational farmers can contribute in these energy goals. I feel like farmers, we're producers, right? We produce food predominantly. Why can't we produce energy? Why aren't we excited about producing food and energy together and making both systems work better on the same piece of land? So making farmland, I hear save farmlands. Well, save it for who? Not the family farmer, right? So I'm interested in saving some of the farmers. And so to me, that means letting us be producers of food and energy in a system that has been created by many of you that will make both operations better on the same piece of dirt.
Great. And so I will use my moderator privilege to ask the first question, and then I will open it up to the audience. But one thing I wanted to ask of each of you, and I wish you could speak about, is, in agrivoltaics, and I think in the history of agrivoltaics, so often what we have seen is that we have a solar project and we expect the farmers to figure out how to farm around it. And I'm looking back there at Liza McConnell, who won a Solar Farmer of the Year award last night, so congratulations, Liza. But I think Liza, I've heard her say, agrivoltaics is kind of like farming in an obstacle course. It's not easy. It's challenging. There's infrastructure. And so often, much of our perspective is sort of, we have a solar project, how do we farm it? I want to, because this is the farmer forum, I want to sort of turn that on its head and ask the panelists, what would be the ideal agrivoltaic system? And this, you don't need to think about cost, don't need to think about practicality, but I guess what are the features that would make it, cranberry growing, or corn, soy, other things that would make that really ideal for you and provide the agrivoltaic benefits that you'd want to get, but without some of the challenges. So we can start all the way down there, or maybe work our way back this way. But this is the farmer dream.
Okay, so I think what I see is to look at it from the farmer first angle, which is, what can the farmer make money growing or producing? Maybe, the soil will support a certain crop, and that's what's been historically grown, but the market is fading on that. You're losing $300 an acre. So how can we take these agrivoltaic models and figure out what could we grow if we had innovation dollars, which is what I call the money from the solar company, and we could do something different. So then when you decide where the farmer can make the money, then we get the plans out and start talking design, because it depends. Let's say you want to do cattle, that's going to be a very specific design, because that's what you want to do to make revenue. So I think your answer, or the answer to the question, it starts with the revenue that the farmer thinks he can produce and a bet on the future economically. And then backtracking, sitting down with the engineers to figure out a design that'll work with what I think is the future.
I know I shared at an earlier panel, so apologies if this is repeat to others, but for us, it's actually very helpful to start at an existing solar array to figure out the answer to that question, and to really have several different farmers from different cultural backgrounds get to experiment and then give us that input and insight. I think the one thing we realized quickly is water. So that is non-negotiable. We are grateful that we have a generous neighbor who's a potato farmer who is giving us access to his well this year, which has been transformative from year one, where we were bringing water in, to year two having reliable water access. So that's pretty basic. That's kind of infrastructure, not even related to necessarily the build out of the solar site, but for sure, we had some fun adventures plowing with a tractor having to go in reverse. So the site designs that we're developing for future dreams are going to be different, but I don't think we know enough yet to have a total answer to that question.
To your point, the spacing and whatnot for operation of equipment is something that we took into account early on. So we looked. Can you hear me now? There we go. How about now? We took into account on the design efforts with the spacing of crops, what we were going to try to put in there, so that was part of the design that was accepted, and we ended up building with the how many rows we could fit with crops. With the cattle, we used the same spacing basically, and a lot of it was based on how much sunlight we were going to get to keep the grasses growing properly. So that kind of designated our spacing and whatnot. And it was an early project. So what a lot of things were really unknown. So we just had to go from there. And we built it and discovered how it works, and I think a lot of the tolerances could be tightened up. But that's kind of where we took it at, right there.
All right, I want you guys not to, think that I'm making numbers up. So, University of Illinois Farm Doc Daily is published by U of I, land-grant university, ag economists. If you go on there, you can look at their crop budget, is what they call it every year, of their projections of what, they break it down by region and what type of farm, but corn and soybean acres, what they'll do. And so that negative $300 an acre number, that was based on corn prices that were close to $1 higher than they are now. Or I'm sorry, it was about 180 is what you'll find online. Corn prices have tanked since then. We do the math, it's about negative 300. Soybeans, I don't know, I think it's about negative 120 bucks an acre. So not quite as big of a hit, but still a hit. These are real numbers. And in my experience, what our farm actually does at the end of the year has correlated pretty closely with their projections for several years. So you're asking me what scenario beats negative $300 an acre? I would tell you literally everything that you could imagine. If there are solar panels that could at least just pay the property tax, right? And so that anything I do underneath is gravy, I'll do that. It's so easy right now to beat our industry, what the commodity markets are giving us. Now there are good years. We had a couple good years where we made a couple $100 an acre, but it is a terrible business model to do that for a couple years and then go negative for who knows how long. So yeah, I would say literally anything you can think of. If the panels can cause me to just pay my fixed costs of the land, I'd grow anything, and we'll figure it out. Super easy. Like we're innovative. A lot of farmers are innovative. There's probably a few exceptions out there, but a lot of farmers are innovative. If you can beat negative $300 an acre, give me a call. And if there's panels on it, you're already way above that. So it's so easy. It's so easy.
I want to build upon what you said before about tenant farmers. And having done this with progressive developers, and I would suggest that if anyone's here to this conference, you're progressive just by being here, is that there's a difference between the landowner and the farmer. Leases, traditional solar would say the landowner gets paid, and that's great. That's great for that one person, that one family, that one company. But what about the tenant farmer that's getting kicked off the land with a combine they just took $1 million note out on? They lost the acres to farm. So you can set this up, and I challenge every one of you actually to think about this. Is there's 3 sources of income related to solar. 4 actually. There's solar, the income from the electricity. There's the landowner making a lease rent payment. There's the tenant farmer that gets paid to farm because solar developers are already paying for vegetation management. You've heard about it, sheep or vegetation management, right? So if you're paying a lawnmower, landscaper, a couple $100 an acre, then if that tenant farmer, A, doesn't have to pay the rent of a couple $100 an acre, and B, gets paid a couple $100, I'm just making up numbers here, but just roll with me, that's a $400 per acre swing. Matt's in business, right, as a farmer.
I just want to build off that. So I met a couple developers here last year, and a month later, we're kind of going through some hypotheticals on a chunk of ground that we've got. Hey, what would work here? And I'm telling these guys, I'm like, hey, listen, in the meantime, I want you to put into this contract. They sent me a boilerplate contract, and I'm like, here, you got to put in here, just for a starter, that I at least have first right of refusal for any type of groundskeeping work. I'm already live there. I already have the equipment. They wouldn't do it. They said, oh, there's insurance concerns, and I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So that's a perfect point that like we need to have baked into these things that the people that still live there in those small communities that have been hit hard, they should at least be given first shot at maintaining the place.
Great. Excellent points. All right. Hopefully, you've all had time to come up with some brain busters or brain teasers for the panelists. I see a question right here. great. So we've got a question about sort of the business model and then also carbon credits. Who would like to tackle that? Iain?
So from a business model, I'd say there's three kinds of solar on agricultural land. There's behind the meter, oftentimes roof mounted, something like that, goes to offset your expenses. There's small solar, and small solar is something, four types. Small solar is something that's like 3 acres or less that you can own, that you can get a REAP grant for as a farmer. It can be behind, mostly not behind the meter, it's actually servicing, going to the grid. Your interconnection costs are way lower, your ability to connect is way faster, get those projects done quicker. That generally is capacity in your area. Capacity is the biggest limiting factor for farms. Are you near three-phase? Are you near other things? The third way is community solar, right? Generally, distributed generation is 50 megawatts or less, 20 megawatts or less. And then there's utility solar. Utility scale, as you've heard, is much more complicated, much more, takes more time, and you have to interconnect to the grid. So we could make all kinds of generalizations, but depending upon your area, the largest limiting factor is the interconnection. If it's good, then you can have the discussion about the size and the acres and then the reputation of the developer.
I can talk about whoa, that's loud. I can talk about carbon credits. We don't participate in that marketplace currently for 3 reasons. 1, we're pretty small. 2, the price is very low. And 3, we've already implemented some more conservation focused practices so that the way that the market is built, because we're already doing some of the right things, we get paid less because we adopted before we started getting paid. So it's a really weird market, and generally speaking, the guys that I know, farmers aren't very excited about the carbon credit market. However, another thing I asked the developer to put in the contract is, hey, any carbon credits that come from this project, I want to get those. And again, it was not met with I think they just wanted to do a deal real quick and move on to the next one. And that's the feeling I got from the whole thing last year, was there was going to be a lot of token use and a lot of let's just do deals and do this. And if there's any policymakers or folks out there, let's get this right. This is a once in a generation chance we have to throw a bone to small family farms, and we're missing it so far. So that's my main point. And then on the carbon thing, it's really where that works is if you got some really big operators, some big farms, because at $5 an acre to do a whole bunch of paperwork, and I'm losing 300 already with it's not really worth it for us. That's my perspective.
So let me speak to that. Oh, sorry. So in my particular project, there's 4 landowners. Only one landowner is a farmer and a landowner, and that's me. So I was able to get the maintenance contract for the whole park. So you may be in a situation where your piece is fairly small, but some of the neighbors are corporate owned, they're absentee landowners. So if the developer can make deals with other people, your leverage is, I know this land, like in my case, I've been there for 100 years, like you're saying. If they hire a landscaper and hire someone, who's gonna know, we've had the land for 122 years. Who exactly knows this land better than we do? So that's your angle to increase the size of your farm with that maintenance contract, and then the maintenance plan is agrivoltaics. So you may have to help or encourage the developer to reach out to some of those corporate landowners or absentee landowners, because most of them are bottom line people anyway. But if they know it's still going to be farmed by somebody that knows what they're doing, it can be the difference between them saying yes and no.
Actually, you hit my point. Nice.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, I think next we had the gentleman in the blue right here.
So, no. The answer is no. So, and this just goes, there are those that know solar, and there are those that know agriculture. And those that know solar, traditionally, I'm hopefully not offending any of the solar developers in here. This is just my perspective. That there was a conventional solar is you go in, you try to sign a bunch of landowners up for the lowest cost. You may or may not build a project, but you don't tell them that. You string them along until you know what your interconnection costs and all your costs are. And in the old style of conventional solar, that kind of worked because the landowner was just happy to get some money. But when you're dealing with a farmer who's dependent upon the land for their income, and particularly dual agrivoltaics, right? Now you're engaging with another entity that is going to be on that land. And so these conversations are really important. When you peek under the hood and you see what kind of income there is actually going to all on the line, generally speaking, the farmers are the bottom feeders. The landowners, that's just always how it's been, and it's been extractive. And that's what agrivoltaics is trying to turn on its head, is being less extractive, more actually community benefit. Not just say, oh, we're giving $1 million to the school system. Great. Well, how's that benefiting the farmer or the landowner, the tenant farmer that's still kicked off the land? So this is really the opportunity, is to think about these things. So the short answer is no. Do we have to know what those values are? Not really. Do we have to know? We need solar developers to still make money, right? That's the opportunity to have dual use on our properties. But understanding that there is resource there, that we can include infrastructure like a well, like a fence, like shelters, like spigots going out to do irrigation for whatever livestock or crops we have. The capital expenditures are open, and we should be encouraging our farmers to ask those questions of the developers.
So one thing on that, for those of you that were in this morning's preliminary session, the young lady from Department of Energy said they're going to go from 6% solar energy in the country to 40% in 11 years. Trust me, brother, you have the land, you'll have more and more leverage. We'll figure out the conversations, because the one thing they're going to need is the land. And even the smaller size projects, maybe that historically hasn't been the play, but to get to those goals or halfway to those goals, they're going to have to play games they haven't played. And the farmers are learning not to be afraid when the solar guy comes anymore. It's an opportunity, and they have leverage they didn't understand 5 years ago.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and the blue blazer.
Well, I mean, we were brought in as a nonprofit to sort of figure that out because it's complicated, because figuring out who are the farmers who want to do it and what technical assistance might they need and what's the economic viability, and bringing farmers in to try something that's relatively uncharted at sometimes a small scale. So I think we're going to need very creative partnerships, and I think we still have a lot of questions around the funding mechanism for all of that. So right now, in our model as a nonprofit, we fundraise for our staff. So we are covering staff costs associated with finding farmers, doing outreach, bringing farmers to the land, and paying a farmer to do a demonstration plot who's a more veteran farmer. That will work short term. And sometimes when we're writing grants, funders are like, well, why aren't the solar companies paying for that? So I think it's a complicated economic model because there's lots of interest, and I think it's just groups who haven't always come together before. So I think it's going to have to be some creative partnerships, creative financing, but I think it's important that we remember that the landowner and farmers are often different people, and we need to understand the economic viability for folks who are farming, doing the actual work of production in agrivoltaics. And I don't know that the model has that sort of economic incentive baked in.
I'll just add to that real quick. Of course, anytime in a business operation when you add more parties, things get more complicated. So again, I would implore anyone who would listen, let's remove as much complexity as possible and do deals with people that actually, are generationally invested in the land, fully understand it, are willing participants. They want to do this. Let's limit the complexity, limit the points of failure by bringing in, these people onto this land. No, there's a very streamlined and easy way to do it. Unfortunately, there's only 16% of the ground where I farm where that's still the case, where the farmer owns the farmland and farms it. Let's have agrivoltaics take that high road, the simpler, more beautiful model of less people involved, and it's gonna be less complicated. It's gonna work easier. There's gonna be less conflicts. It's just, in a lot of ways, it's the way to go.
By a show of hands, how many of you would like to farm or like to own farmland? Okay. How many of you can afford it? There's a difference. Did everyone notice that? Agrivoltaics changes the game. When you have to have land farmed, and I would say have to, because I think agrivoltaics is going that way. Solar is going towards, if you're going to do solar, you got to farm it. That opens up, see, there's some projects that I'm working on with some really good developers out in Ohio. You take a 1,000-acre site, just to take a round number. That had been farmed by 2 people. Those 2 people are looking to exit. Now there's an opportunity. We could find one person to do 1,000 acres, or if we picked all those hands that were local, that are actually looking to farm, yes, it's complex, but I'll get to that in a sec. Nature's complex. Right? We can be simple, but we can also, we're trying to do something that's kind of complicated, and it's okay to do that. And I think if you're able to have 10 farmers farming those 1,000 acres, now you have built-in diversity of crops, of different backgrounds, races, and every one of them can benefit.
Yeah, I was just going to add one factor too that I think is important to think about in these conversations, and I think I just remember like many things can be true at the same time, right? Families who've been farming for generations like need support and are in a tough spot. I think we've heard that articulated really well. There's also been folks who've had land stolen, right? Whether it's Native American folks, people of color, folks who are enslaved. And I think figuring out how we use agrivoltaics as an opportunity to add elements of justice for all sorts of folks who haven't been at the table, right? Including farmers who often haven't been at the table who own land too, right? So it's multi-layered, but just wanting to put a plug with like, there is some complexity that we get to wrestle with if we want to build for a different outcome than maybe our current food and energy system has gotten us to.
I think what I'm hearing, and I don't disagree with any of this, I think what I'm hearing is this is a unique opportunity. We are in a unique place and time where it can be more than just solar power and it can be more than just food, but it can also be a lifeline or some type of social justice. We can bake that in and it's not going to be fluffy, like it's going to be real tangible stuff. Or we could just let this go to the highest bidder and absentee landowners that have already probably doubled their money in the last 15 years, because if they bought land in Illinois 15 years ago, it's doubled in value. So they're doing fine. They're getting cash rents. Yeah, there's a way to make this, turn it from a win-win into a win-win-win.
Let me say one thing, Jordan. So on the complexity thing, we grow hazelnut orchards. Trust me when I tell you, I have not done agrivoltaics yet, but I've been to Chad's operation 20 times. It will be easier than hazelnut orchards. Okay? So, and if you go to a vineyard, see what those guys have to do. It's way easier than vineyard. It's the same practice back and forth, but the trees are a different size every year. And we have to manage the trees. We have to manage the ground the trees are under. The panels, all we got to do is not hit them. Like, we can do this.
That's great. Okay, we got a lot of hands. I'm going to start, Nina, and then we'll go around the room.
I know there's different models on ownership, but I don't hear a lot of Iain, this is your second generation thinking.
So in our case, and the state of Oregon requires a bond that will cover the decommission, and we've heard a lot in the controversy around our project. If I was putting in greenhouses, covering the whole place in gravel, putting in hoop houses, greenhouses, nobody's involved in the conversation. But since it's solar, I got to have 12 state agencies, I got opposition groups, I got everybody involved. And everybody's worried about what's going to happen, how we're going to put the land back the way it is. Well, you give me 40 years on this land, and I guarantee you we're going to improve it. I don't want it to go back to the way it is. But the chance of them not repowering, because there's going to be more humans, more growth, they're going to repower. That may be reinstallation, but the land is there. You know, if the money's there, it will get taken care of. So the only way that I see that you're going to be stuck with it, which my brother and I will pull them out of the barn, we'll pull them out of the ground, build a pole barn. It's not a problem. But what we do see, yeah, we'll have a beautiful glass pole barn. So, but what I do see is, one, the likelihood that they will be repowered is, after 40 years, that's almost 100%. Two, there is a bond to remove them. And three, if you spend 40 years making the land better, you don't want it to go back. So I think it's a solved problem, is what I'm saying.
Great. And then we had here.
Yeah, hi, I'm a North Carolina solar developer, and I want to do agrivoltaics. I'm here. But I was just listening to some of the numbers here, and I mean, when I'm doing development work in North Carolina, I'm offering what I think is market to what is to lease land. So I'm offering landowners $800, $900, $950 an acre a year. And so I'm just wondering, if you're $300 under, and here comes Tim who offers 900, I'm wondering what farmer says, "Oh man, this is so easy. I'm just going to lease my land and I get my money and I don't have to do anything anymore." Is there hope, or?
Well, this is why the trade organization that I belong to, and I have a lot of respect for, and I don't want to sound condescending. That's why there's so much trepidation, is because most of these guys, they own only 16% of the dirt that they farm, and they see you as an absolute threat because they're paying $350 an acre rent. You come with $950. That's super easy math for the, what is that, 84% of the ground that they don't own. All those landowners are going to be compelled to do your deal. And now we've taken that ground out of production, so the supply-demand curve, we just removed supply, demand's the same, so price went up. Now they've got to bid higher for a limited number of acres. In a year like this one, it makes the math even harder. So that's why we're seeing this resistance. And to me, the core fundamental problem is that the landowner has all the power, and that there's no type of differentiation on the incentive structure from policymakers to make sure to even that balance out, that balance of power. And the landowner's got a ton of power now, and that farmer who's cash renting the majority of their acreage, they see this as a pure threat, and they've got no negotiating power with that landowner because they can't offer more than $350 an acre.
I think here is an answer for that. So you have absentee landowners, you can lease for that amount, bottom line makes sense to them, but without a farmer that knows what they're doing to farm that land, I don't think you get approved in the future. And that farm plan has to be profitable. Yeah, it's the $800, $900 per acre, I call those innovation dollars, but if it's greenwashing, we're just going to say it's agrivoltaics, but the farmer doesn't make any money. He just goes and, he sends his electric tractor through the rows, but he doesn't make any money. Well, I think you're going to increasingly see the governing agencies start to realize, okay, they're just pretending. So I think there has to be farmers step up to say, hey, I'm the ones that will do the agrivoltaics, and it'll be a profit-positive farm operation, and now everybody can get on board with that price point.
Great. Yeah, right here.
On that note, you just spoke of, I feel like there are voices and examples being shown to farmers that ways they can become developers stronger, like examples farmers can use for best practices to like represent their best interests.
Well, that's a great question. So I think it comes back to the agencies, the state and federal, county levels that are approving projects. Once they start to realize that the communities are not going to support projects that aren't really agrivoltaics, then the farmer starts to have, he's the person of interest that has to, hey, will this work? It's not just the solar developer and the agencies or the power companies at the table anymore. It's farmer first. Like, if this guy doesn't think it's working, we don't have the right guy to make this project work, then it's a project killer from the beginning. So I think as the knowledge increases with the landowners, the leverage of understanding of how this can work will increase. Did that answer your question?
And just to dovetail on that, that's why I drove up here today, is to listen, is to put this idea out there that, and that's why I'm going to go back to another meeting, and maybe they'll take it back off the table, and maybe we'll move the ball forward a little bit right now. But no, I don't think that is being communicated to farmers very, very well right now. I think they're just scared, and for partially, I totally understand why. But there's got to be this education piece, and that is such a cop-out word. The answer is education, because that's so hard, right? But somehow we've got to figure out, I kind of wish it would come from the policymaker standpoint, that it's a requirement. Hey, you want incentive dollars? Help a farmer or some other group that really needs the help, and make this a legitimate agrivoltaics project. We're done just stamping things and making, I mean, no offense, like wealthy people wealthier on this whole thing. We can do more than that. So right now, no, farmers don't know their bargaining position, because they don't really have one, because policymakers have never put that into policy, that there should be a good purpose associated with these projects.
Well, and to build on that, I think in addition to education, don't you think it's also like trust comes from like changing of practices and behaviors? So if developers aren't willing to write in, yeah, you get first right of refusal to mow your own freaking farm, then how are farmers supposed to think like we should really work with more solar developers? So it's like also I think about changing behavior and practices, and I do think it's about, and this is hard when there is urgency, but I think it's about slowing down. And you have to listen to rural community members. You have to pay attention to where you are. You have to believe that these folks know what their community needs, and that solar could be an asset requested by communities, and that's where the power is, not solar being put on communities and displacing like rural voice. So I think there's absolutely a way to do it, but I think that we all have to check our pace a little bit, which is hard when there's entrepreneurial spirit. But I think relationship is where trust comes from, and I don't think we can educate our way out of building real trust.
And I would say the word education is we know and we're going to tell you. And I just have a hard time with that personally. This is about building and expanding capacity. Capacity building, capacity expansion, understanding collectively what we bring to the table. How often in our lifetime has there been a movement that you can understand that there is one and that you're a part of it? That's what we're in right now. Just take a minute. We are at the beginning of a movement. We are establishing it. So to your point, we don't have one established. Let's do it together. When we collectively suggest that that's the case, right? When we empower, we help expand the capacity of farmers to think, who are already independent, right? Independent-minded, to ask questions. These questions. Who's a vegetation management person? What are you doing for fencing? What are you doing for your access? When you contract this out to an EPC contractor, have they gotten the memo? Do I have the right to be on the calls every week with the construction folks? Because that's what's happening. Responsible developers are doing that. I can say firsthand because I'm on them, right? On weekly calls with the construction folks. And there are things that happen during the week, and it comes down to the weakest link. Like, it doesn't matter what you do planning-wise or what you said you committed to permitting-wise. If there's ledge that's hit, what do? They've got to comply with getting that post down into the ground a certain depth, or it doesn't pass the quality control, right? This is a very simple thing, but this happens all the time. Do they dig a 15-foot hole and blast it out? Do they drill it? What is the end goal there, right? So I was on a call that this was a question. How do we do that? And we talked it through. We said, well, we're not going to pour cement because we don't want to deal with that. There's a technology that involves doing a drill. Let's pump it out, and we worked through it. We worked through it on the call with all the folks involved. So if the farmer's engaged on a weekly basis with the people that are out there, they've located the porta potties in a particular place, the construction trailer in a particular place. People aren't driving everywhere. They're not out there with glass, right, for lunch breaks. These are basic things, but these make a difference. And that's how you build trust with the farmers, when you engage them at the very start and you ask these questions of them, and they are empowered to ask the questions of you developers, then we're together.
And I think we're headed to where the developers, which we need, right? This doesn't work, solar doesn't work without some developers. When we can build that trust and that relationship to where not landowners, but farmers are the key to solar, then I think we're starting to get where you'd like to see.
Right, the flannel right there.
Hey, I got a question. I'm a grazer in Minnesota. I do a lot about soil. I got a question about the impact of row cropping on soil. And, you know, in Minnesota, for every pound of corn that's produced, you lose a pound of topsoil every year from erosion. And I'm curious if you guys have thought at all about the impact of soil erosion and conventional agriculture on solar sites and how to address that in ways that we're not going to end up with hugely eroded sites.
I think about soil a lot too. I can't confirm off the cuff your corn number, but I can tell you that we are depleting topsoil. The Midwest, our most precious resource agriculturally, is slowly being depleted for $4 corn, much of which gets converted into ethanol. That we all understand those numbers. I don't need to go down. A whole bunch is getting exported to some of which are very unfriendly nations, and we're depleting this resource. So that's strategically not wise. The way I look at it on my farm, I want to have a thick, healthy layer of topsoil for a long time. I think that I could probably farm something underneath some panels that in the 30-year lifespan, let's just say it's 30, I've got more topsoil than the field next to me that didn't have, because they're going to keep farming $4 bushel corn that's eroding topsoil, and that whole time I'm going to have a buffer strip around the whole outside of that thing. I'm going to be able to do cover crops because I don't have to farm it as intensely, because I've got a revenue profit stream coming from the solar panels. I think we can build soil health if we do it the right way. And that's where I wish my trade organization would be out in front of this and have like a construction guidebook. Say, hey, you know what, let's even go to policymakers. Here's the 5 pages of guidelines on how in this region one of these farms needs to be built to minimize topsoil loss. And I bet you if we did it intelligently, you would have more topsoil at the end of the project's life than you would if you would have just kept row cropping it.
To that point, and exactly what you're saying, Matt, if you're negative $300 per an acre, yeah, you care about your topsoil erosion, but it didn't make your list today, right? You got other problems. Where if you're positive 300 acres, and some of that is innovation dollars from the solar companies, well, now you can spend time on that. You can do the things that we would love to do for the soil, for the farm, for the future. And so really it's about having that income where now I can go let's go make the soil better.
You can take your foot off the gas pedal, because our farmland is being farmed real hard to even get to these modest profitability.
And I think some of these solar projects with these innovation dollars can show practical models of how to do it. And maybe those other people that aren't in solar projects, they're not in agrivoltaics, but they've seen, okay, well, the neighbor did it under his panels, I can do it. but he could afford to do it because he had some of those dollars.
I was going to say, I could attest that the, having that revenue, and even it's a year-round revenue, which is a big change, and being able to, hey, we got to do this, well, we have the funds to do it. And if we need to buy something in the spring, we have the funds to do it. So we can make those improvements that my previous generations would be scratching to do. And now it's just a matter of getting it done more. And it's been a blessing to be able to do that. You know what you need to do, you know what you want to do, but accomplishing it was not always that easy. And this has been it's been a revolutionary change for us.
And I know we're at time. I'm just going to add just one thought, because I think there's so much division in how these issues are framed from farmers and environmentalists. And I think the piece that I just continue to remember is it's like farmers are seeing climate change impact farming, whatever you call it, whether it's lots of dry seasons in a row and then really wet seasons in a row, or unpredictability or whatever. And so I think that there is common ground we can build on in terms of trying to make a more resilient system that helps farmers and is more environmentally sound. I don't think those two things have to be in conflict with one another.
And those are great words in which we can end. So can we give our panelists one round of applause here? I see some people were videotaping this. Hopefully other people are scratching down notes. So many great insights. Thank you. Thank you, panelists, for sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, your experience on this. I think these perspectives are absolutely essential, as we heard, so many reasons why. All right, I'm going to pass this off to Mr. Dan. Give us some instructions for the evening, but thank you all again.
Thank you. Incredible panel. Can we give them just one more round of applause, please? Yes. I love farmers. Okay, thank you. It's been an incredible day. Brace yourself for another day tomorrow, but it's the party night. If y'all don't know, it's time for me to put on my social management hat. Is that the term? Anyway, double happy hour starting right now in the expo hall. And by double, I mean it's 2 freaking hours. So pace yourselves, be respectful, sneak in a glass of water, but we're very serious about the networking. The morning run tomorrow has been moved to 7. FYI, there may be a relation there, I'm not so sure. And yeah, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Looking forward to a great night. There's after hours and after parties. The Light Star event is sold out. Looking forward to a big announcement tonight at Crust. But over in the little Rosemont cluster, very walkable, there's a lot of different things happening around. And I think the last call rumor that I heard is Tiki Tiki. And the only thing I will say about Tiki Tiki is that they are not shy on the rum over there. So be careful at the Tiki Tiki bar. Okay? Let's have a good night. I'll see you in the expo hall. Oh, and you can buy a t-shirt. You can buy Shelly in the expo hall, but you got to find the right lady.